C, C, CQ.
Hello and welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification quiz show, where I'm here once again with Mr. Derek Bingham because we decided, seeing as we only got through three questions last week with D-Bing, we would bring him back to finish our pack. D-Bing, welcome back. How are you this week?
Thanks, MJ. Thanks for having me back. I feel honored. We are doing the second episode in the series, so this is definitely the Empire Strikes Back of my CQ journey. So, yeah, thank you. I'm humbled and honored to be back.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's try and actually get through the pack on behalf of our viewers today, D-Bing. That's job 0 today.
Yep.
But before we jump into that, I did want to ask you a question that we got asked last week, directed to you. So, D-Bing, as a developer advocate, can you tell our viewers a little bit about how they would get started on their developer journey?
Yeah, sure. So that is quite a long answer that I can give you, MJ. Probably take half an hour, and then I
Oh
can
no,
get through
what have
no
I
other
done?
no other questions. But yeah, seriously though, getting
Top tip
started.
then. If we do it
Yeah,
as a top tip, D-Bing.
okay. No. Yeah. So getting started as a developer on AWS is I'll probably give three pieces of advice. The first one is connect in social channels. So a lot of the developer advocates like myself and a lot of the AWS people who are charged with building the developer community are quite very active in social channels. So they'll be on Twitch, LinkedIn, and on Twitter as well. So there's some great shows on Twitch run by the community that are well worth checking out as well. Not just this show, CQ. We also have no Developers Let's Code, which is a
Oh,
show
yeah.
that we run every week. So that's a great way. It's a nice little entry point into how to build certain things on AWS. So you can check that out on Twitch. And there's also a great show on Twitch by Rick Houlihan, who is the advocate for DynamoDB, who goes really deep into Dynamo. So they're both sides of how complex and how deep you want to go into the services. You can just get that via the social media channels. The second one is, of course, play with stuff. So there's a lot of great
Absolutely.
tutorials on the website, and you can have a look at those workshops available that you can run through. And then finally, there's of course the certification and the flow of going through and getting your exams and doing it that way through the developer to the DevOps Pro. It's a great foundation for becoming a developer because you're
Do
across
you
more
have
of
your
the.
DevOps Pro yet, DB?
I do. I got mine in Chicago. Funny enough, this
Did
year.
you?
Yes, in
Nice
January.
one.
So yeah, that
There
was
we
fun.
go. Well, thanks for that. Speaking of the pathway through, let's quickly bring up and remind everyone which exam we are talking about today. So with DBing today, we are talking associate level, and this is episode 16, part 2 on the developer exam. So hopefully he's going to give you a few tips and a few tricks today for that particular exam. DBing, are you ready to get into today's questions?
I am pumped. I promise. I promise to do more than three. Honest.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Quick question in the chat, is CQ something done every Tuesday? We have been airing weekly, so it is Tuesday 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock now with daylight savings for PDT, which is Wednesdays 10 a.m. over here on Australian Eastern Standard Time. We have only 2 episodes left of the season actually after D-Bings today, so watch out for those. Now here we go with question number 1/4. SQS, first up of the day. So D-Bing, your e-commerce shopping cart communicates with the ordering system via an Amazon SQS queue. However, some messages are getting stuck in the queue due to errors, and the queue size is increasing exponentially. I've been worried about saying that word all morning. D-Bing, how can this be avoided?
Oh, I love this question because um, it's decoupling your front end from your back end by using the queue, which is best practice. Funny enough, so I love answering questions that
I
are
like
actually okay. This could be like a real world application that I'm building, and I've decoupled. I've done the right thing. I've decoupled my front end from my back end using a queue. So the first answer there is implement a dead
dead
letter
letter
queue.
Q.
So dead letter queue, it's usually referred to as a DLQ. Once you get down with it, it's a DLQ. So what that does is a dead letter queue is there to get all the messages. So the way the queue works is you put messages on a queue, and they work their way along the queue, and then they get pulled out by a worker or consumer, and then that then does what it needs to do. The message may send it to another API or whatever, and then the message leaves the queue. However, if
Okay.
the message is for some reason can't be consumed, it may be invalid or something like that, then you can push it to what's called a dead letter queue. So it's almost the orphan messages or the messages that didn't behave as we expected to, all should go to a dead letter queue, and that way, as part of the life cycle of the application, you can go into the dead letter queue and find out why these messages are
Nice.
not being consumed. So it's a good pattern to use. So that's
Do you know
actually
where
quite.
that name comes from, Stephen? The
The
dead letter?
dead letter. I actually don't know the background of the dead letter queue. It's probably a
It
post
is.
some sort
It
of
comes from the
postal.
post office. So what do they do with letters that just don't get sent out to someone and keep coming back to them? And that's exactly where it comes from. Anyway,
Nice,
number two.
nice,
I know you
nice.
like number one, but let's check all answers as we should always do in our exam.
Absolutely. So the one's a great answer. There could be a better one, just hanging around the corner, just
Same.
lurking. Could be in your dead letter queue. Uh,
What
so
about
yeah.
FIFO?
So it's FIFO. So you could change the queue type to FIFO. So there's two types of queues that you can spin up when you specify a SQS queue. First one is standard queue, so it's the default type. So it supports at least once message delivery. So every message in the queue will be delivered at least once. Uh, so your app has to handle that. And then FIFO queues, which is the second type of queue you can spin up, which is a first in, first out model. FIFO, like FIFO workers that we have over here in the West, quite a lot of. So it's first in, first out, and it's the messages will be consumed only once and in a very strict order. So although that is that both different queues have different use cases. In this
Yep.
particular use case, I'm not sure how actually putting the queue as a FIFO queue would fix the problem, because the messages would still get stuck, whether what order they're in. So I'm not as happy with that one as I was with number one. And
Cool.
then if we go on to number three, so lower the maximum number of in-flight messages. So what's an in-flight message? What do messages fly? So a single SQS message, so it can contain an unlimited number of messages. However, there's like I think it's 120,000 or 100 is
Okay.
100,000. I don't know.
Oh,
Quota. It's
we
a
better
lot.
check that, producer John.
For number of in-flight messages for a standard queue. So messages are defined as in-flight if they've been received by the queue, but from the queue by this consuming component, so they're actually being consumed, but if they've not been deleted. So the consumer is like, yeah, I'm processing it, but I'm not happy with the processing, so I haven't deleted it from the queue yet. So that's what an in-flight message is. Again, how would this fix our problem?
Yep.
I'm not quite sure. So I'll just have a think about this for a second. So if I lower the that are listening to the end of the queue and they pull messages off. They process them. Well, actually, they don't pull them off. They set what's called a visibility timeout.
Yeah,
So a visibility timeout is saying,
it's
I'm
me right
going
now.
to, yeah, I can't see. I'm, uh, I'm, I'm trying to, I'm focusing here.
Sorry, we were having a few technical issues on this side, DB, and you nailed it. You just carried right on.
Yeah, so visibility timeout. So the consumer or the worker pulls a message off the queue, but it sets the visibility timeout to say, I'm going to deal with this message in X number of seconds, and if it doesn't actually finish, then the message will be back on the queue because it's exceeded its visibility timeout. So that how will that fix the the
Messages not deleting problem,
yeah,
Dina.
yeah, that's not going to fix it either, because the messages are still just going to get stuck in your queue,
Yeah.
because in the end of the day there's nowhere for them to go. So that's why I will lock in answer one. Thank you, MJ.
You're very welcome. We've had a lot of crazy things going on our side, Deeping, while you just continued with that question. So big shout out to Deeping for just continuing that for us. I can confirm that you are right, 120,000 in-flight messages. Producer John has kindly put that in the chat. Yes, yes, shouldn't second guess yourself. And 20,000 if it is a FIFO queue. So some great extra information there we worked on while we were totally offline. So let's reveal if it is indeed the dead letter queue. And Mr. Bob, you're very welcome for that tidbit of information that I gave you anytime. Okay, we got there. It is, of course, number one. Off to a flying start. See what I did there?
Yes.
Let's move on
Yeah.
to question number two.
How am I doing for time?
We're already like halfway through the show. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. Here we go.
Okay.
Chuck away that question. Deeming. Management has asked you to track the number of concurrent users in a web application and alert the operations team if the number of users suggests a problem with the application. How can you implement this? Very vague question.
Yes, there's a number of ways to implement this.
Okay.
So
Let's have a look.
in
Hopefully,
my
the
head,
most
looking at
obvious
the
one
answers,
is
I'm like,
going to be one of our answers.
yes, where's this going? So how to implement this? So store the data in DynamoDB and use DynamoDB streams to trigger a Lambda function to monitor the number of users. Okay, so this makes a number of assumptions. This answer. So DynamoDB, as we all know, is a NoSQL object store. DynamoDB streams, people who haven't used it, is basically you set it up in a DynamoDB table, and it sends the updates of the DynamoDB table to an endpoint. So it's like as updates come through to Dynamo, streams, listens, and pushes the updates through to another consuming service. So you could push DynamoDB streams through, and that could possibly then go to another system that could control your notifications, but it's quite ambiguous. So
Yeah.
I'll go, yeah, that could work,
Let's
but I'd
park
have
it.
to
Yeah.
build
Keeping that one in
things.
play for now. What about number two?
Number two, thank you. Send the user count to Amazon SNS and use a subscription filter. Wow. Okay, so if simple notification system is our way of, if you have topics and subscribers, and it's a way of broadcasting something's happened. So you can have a subscription filter that you can define on SNS. So you can define a filter policy.
Yep.
And then you can filter out what's needed. So you'd have to go, okay, as a user hits the website, you'd have to filter out the user details, and then again, SNS would send it to a separate system,
Okay.
which you'd have to think about and build. So it's similar to one. It's another way of fixing this, of potentially solving this problem. Three is count the number of logins. count the number of logins tracked by CloudTrail. So CloudTrail, so CloudTrail's really not meant for this. So this is
No.
CloudTrail is all about logging API calls. So it's concerned with who did what on AWS. So API calls to service or resource, not really application specific. CloudWatch is really where you want to push logs for applications. So that's what's happening on AWS. So that's all that sort of thing. So I wouldn't use CloudTrail for this at all. So I'll discount 3. And then
Oh, good.
4.
You've finally gotten rid of one. That's good.
Yes. And then send user accounts to Amazon CloudWatch and use anomaly detection to trigger alarms. Okay, so this is an interesting answer. Okay, so CloudWatch, as
You got
we
your CloudWatch, which you requested back in number 3.
and then anomaly detection to trigger an
What
alarm.
is that? What's anomaly detection?
So that's cool. It's a cool feature that we added to CloudWatch recently. I think it was either this year or end of last year. Can't remember. And what it does, it allows you to set the usual behavior of your application. So CloudWatch can track metrics of your application. And so one of those metrics could be users. So
Yep.
it could track the users over time. And what you do, it uses machine learning to go, okay, this is the usual behavior of the
The
application.
normal parameters, yep.
It's on a metric. And so if there's some abnormal behavior, it could go over the skew, so it could go over the line, and you could then wire up a trigger to go, oh, okay, something unexpected is happening based on past behavior. That's raised an alarm. So that's not a bad way of doing this, actually. And you wouldn't have to write as much as you'd have to do for 1 and 2. So I like it the best. Let's go for 4 because it's a cool solution.
For 4. Anomaly detection to the rescue. D-Bing says we do have most people going for number 4 on the poll, which I think is now back up and running. So thanks for bearing with us, viewers. Let's reveal the answer to question number 2, and it is CloudWatch and anomaly detection. Well done, D-Bing. Now, I did see a few people in the chat. They must have missed the answer to question 1 when we were going through our technical issues on this side. It was the DLQ. Okay. Moving on to question, and I said it, just like you told me to, in a cool way. D-Bing, learned that today.
I'm looking forward to when you're sitting here. It's going to sit your developer exam soon, MJ. I know you are.
I probably should after all this time I've spent with you over the last 2 weeks, D-Bing. Question number 3 on authentication. Here we go. You are creating a photo sharing application. Users should be capable of authenticating via their favorite social media system. How can your application grant access to such users?
Yep. So this is a pretty standard use case where you have an application and you want to create a login. So you want to federate that login with, say, a Google or Facebook credential provider. So how do you do it? So answer 1, create IAM user with trust policy for their social media site. That's not really what you want to do at all. So what that's doing, you really want to decouple your application from that IAM, from the identity provider. So IAM has no knowledge of that third party social media provider site. That answer itself just doesn't make sense. So I'm just gonna go, yeah.
Good. No one's chosen it too. Good.
Yep. So use assume role with web identity. So that is an API operation, and it actually returns a set of temporary security credentials. Yep, it does. And so that's used specifically for federating. So federated users that are using an open ID. So that's usually an open standard that we use for federating to social providers, so public identity providers. So that's a really good answer. And I am very happy with that one. So I'll go on to the other 2 just in case there's more to be said. And there's always more to be said. So next one, get federation token. pointing to the social media side. Okay, this has been put in to confuse. So
I know you were talking about federating the whole time. I'm like, ooh, I can see this coming up.
yes. Identities. Once you work through it, it's not that complex, but there's a lot of terms to get your head around. So get a federation token. So that also returns a temporary set of security credentials. But I think the expiration date and its complexity is a lot different than assume role with identity. I just know
Okay.
that I know from reading that assume role with identity is the best practice to use, where get
Okay.
federation token is not, and that
I'm
is
just making notes for my exam, DB.
yeah. If you see federate with social media provider, assume role with web identity. So get federation token may work, but it's not as good as assume role with identity. And then for use Active Directory connector, AD connector with a trust policy linked to a social media site. So that's again, that's one of those questions that you're like, no, because Active
Let's not
Directory,
do that.
let's not do that, because Active Directory is usually Active Directory is used by organizations as a way of storing credentials and user data, but that the connectors, how we say we connect into Active Directory. So it's got nothing to do with, say, if you wanted to add a Google or a Facebook login to your social media site. So again, I think that's there to completely confuse you because it's identity. So I would go with question 2 because I have done
Answer 2.
a bit of work around apps and identity.
Awesome. We got most people agreeing with you on the poll as well. So this is good news. Let's reveal the answer, shall we? It is indeed number 2, another 3 for 3 debuting, and we are doing better than last week because we've reached question number 4. I wonder if this is where it all falls apart. Lambda, you should be fine.
Yes.
Right?
Lambda. I
Let's
can't.
do it.
Spelling lambda is the hardest bit about lambda at the minute. I have problems spelling it.
Yeah, with your accent.
Yes.
All right, let's do it. An AWS Lambda function has been configured to create a thumbnail image whenever an object is created in a particular Amazon S3 bucket. However, it is getting stuck in an infinite loop. How can this be avoided?
Okay, cool. Another good question because you could actually build this. So the first answer is allocate reserved concurrency for the function. So everybody knows what Lambda is. It's an event-driven function that will do a piece of work based on a particular event, and you can wire it up to a number of different events within AWS. And so what reserved concurrency is you can actually reserve a number of lambdas that for your workload for any given time. So concurrent lambdas, if you have, say, you have 3 images being uploaded to a bucket at the same instance, you could have lambdas listing for that upload event, and they could process those 3 images in parallel so that they're concurrent.
Okay.
So you can reserve a state of a number of concurrent lambdas, so they're ready to go. So that's good. Infinite loop. I'm not sure how that would fix an infinite loop, because an infinite loop will occur if, say, you're acting on an event, you do some work, you think you're finished, so you go check the finish condition. Actually, it's not true, so you go, oh, do it again. Oh, not ready yet. Do it again. So that's how you get stuck in an infinite loop. So concurrency wouldn't reserve concurrency. Fix that.
So in this instance, it's creating a thumbnail of a thumbnail of a thumbnail, and so on. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's what we're trying to avoid.
Exactly. The I call it the death spiral because there's no way out of it. So that's what.
I mean, I'm hoping there is. I'm hoping there's an answer right here.
Let's see if we find it. Maybe answer 2. Uh, so increase the provision and concurrency of the function. So provision concurrency is something that you can do to it's almost to so lambdas work in that they work on an event, they
Yep.
almost spin up, do the work that they need, and then they close.
Yep.
so
Okay.
so so provision concurrency, what that's doing, it's going, okay, I want X lambdas ready to go. So they're ready, they're listening, they're pumped, they're primed, and then they go boom, we're ready to do some work. So they don't have to, start up, do the work, and then shut down. They're ready. They're on the money. So that's provision concurrency. So again, I don't know how provision concurrency could fix this
Yeah.
death spiral problem. So I would move on to the next
Area to number
question.
2.
Going. So yep, next 3.
So you're 50 on the poll between 3 and 4.
Okay. Thanks. I'm actually not looking at the poll.
That's what I'm here for, to help you.
Thanks.
And that was
No,
so helpful. They're dead set split on the poll.
no, I'm worried. I'm worried. So, um, configure throttling on a function. So throttling on a function is basically saying my reserve concurrency is tending to 0. So I'm throttling the number of functions available to actually process this type of event. So could this stop your death spiral? Yes, it would stop your death spiral because you'd have eventually no lambdas available to consume the event.
Yeah.
But that seems a bit heavy-handed. I'm sure there's a better way.
Hammer approach. Yep.
Yes, it's like yeah, every nail needs a hammer, or every job needs a hammer, or some phrase that I've completely lost.
Yeah, I think you did. What about number 4?
Yes, well, yes, good segue. Thank you. Configure a prefix on Amazon S3 event. Oh, yes. Okay, so this is going basically process a thumbnail. So when the image gets uploaded, process it, but store it as with a different prefix. So what you're doing here is you're negating the fact that you may store the image on top of an existing image and get into that death spiral, or that infinite loop. So that's actually that's a good one. It's simple, it's effective. You don't have any fancy terms or anything. It's just simply just rename the image and put a prefix on it, like it. 4.
And there's a new feature, multi-attach, Derek. Is that going to help this or not?
Multi-attach of, I don't know about this feature.
My bad. Moving on. So you're locking in number 4.
Yes, I'll look in number 4 and I'll read about multi-attach.
Number 4 it is. We got
Yeah.
that.
Simple and effective.
I reckon with you, we've got 30 seconds left. How about we go for a tip of the week from Deeping this week?
Tip.
Yeah.
Yes.
Give me a
okay.
second. Let me bring up your slide. All right. Tip of the week from Deeping. Top tip when sitting your exam, which we all know you've got lots of experience in, for our viewers this week.
So my one tip is to do the official practice exam the day before sitting your real exam.
Okay.
And don't get stressed when you fail the practice exam. I have yet to pass an AWS practice exam.
Really?
Correct. And I've never failed a real exam.
I love this. I love the honesty. So do the practice exam. Don't panic when you fail it. You'll be fine for the real exam.
Yep. So
I
if
love
you're
it.
So if it's all about confidence in going into the exam, and knowing that you don't know everything, but you will pass if you're you've done enough study.
Study. playing around, like you said, hands on keyboard.
Yes.
D-Bing, thank you so much for joining me again, 2 weeks in a row. I really, really appreciate it. We got through a good amount of questions and we got in a sneaky extra episode of the season. So thank you so much, D-Bing. We hope
Thanks
to
for having
have
me
you on
back.
again for season 3 next year. In the meantime, we have 2 great guests to finish out season 2 coming up in the next few weeks. So thank you all for joining us. We will see you next time on CQ.